this is Joy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a magically fun card to share with you for scrappytails crafts. I decided to try my hand at creating a galaxy background with Ken Oliver's Color Burst powders. And so I started with a scrap piece of Canson XL watercolor paper, and I lightly tapped on the red, the yellow, the blue, and the purple powders from the Ken Oliver Brights collection. And I emphasize tap the powders. Do not squeeze them, do not dump them, or else you're going to have a nightmare on your desk. You can see that I tapped mine and I still have color everywhere. So I tapped this onto a dry piece of watercolor paper and then squirted it down with my distress sprayer. I then brought in a towel and kind of sopped up some of the pulling areas, and I dried it with my heat tool. And by heating that and drying that in between applying the next application, you preserve some of the color and some of the nuggets. Now, I will say I did not go completely dry with the panel, so that when I tapped the next set of color on, which was the purple, it left nuggets of color. Now this is what I find very fun and interesting. You can then use distress oxides or distress inks on top of it to continue to deepen your colors. So I come in with chipped sapphire, and I put a pretty big thick vignette around the edges of my panel, and I do that kind of thick with the blue, but with the black soot I don't go in as heavy because I still want some of the color to pop through. So I was very strategic with the way I put down the black soot. I love the way that this turned out. To me it's incredible. It was an easy, fun technique, and I think anybody, no matter what the skill level, could achieve this look. So I came in with some mica spray that I made from Arteza's gold mica and water, and it's a bottle from Dollar Tree. So basically it's kind of like a perfect pearls kind of type thing, and I dropped some of that on with the nozzle, and I also sprayed it and dried that with the heat gun. And what that did was it not only created shimmer, but it also made the oxidize a little bit, making it look like stars. So while that completely dries, I come in with some smooth cardstock and the Fairy Girl stamp set from scrappytails, and I stamp that down with Memento ink, and I get a really good impression using my ink smusher, and then I color her. So one thing that I see a lot are failure to start, and that's with transparent objects, whether it be wings, whether it be glass, or whatnot. So I really wanted to take a look at this. I sped my coloring up by about 4 times so that we could talk about it without taking up, like 30 minutes of your time. Anyhow, I start with the skin, and I moisten the paper with an E000, and then go in where the shadows would be with a 04, and I work my way through the 11 and the 21. Then I decide to color her clothing, and I use the BV 04, 02, and a 01. And basically I go in where it would be darkest, like where the wings meet. Now we're going to talk about the transparent part. So if you were going to believe that these wings were transparent and that you could see through them, but you would still see the shoulder. So I came in with a BV 00 and a 01. The 00 covered the entire shoulder, and that way it looked like the wing was on top of the shoulder, and then right where the wing would gather at the shoulder blade, I did add some 01 for some shading. Now we're at the wings, and I used a BG11 a B00, and an R11. So the key is to keep the wings very pastel white. So if you look at my background, I've got the reds, I've got the greens, and I've got the blues and purples in there. So I made sure to put my R11 closest to the red area of the background, and then I dispersed it in 3 more spots to give the illusion of light bouncing. And I repeated that with the BG11 and the B00, and I even think I did that with the BV00 as well. So then I start working on the hair. And hair is always a process. It looks terrible before it doesn't. And mine always looks terrible. Always, always before it doesn't. So I went in with an E51 and I moistened the paper. Then around the part where the floral headband is, I put in my darkest color, which would be the E59. And I also went in where like the braids would intertwine with one another, and I put in the E59. Then I flicked in some E57 over each of those spots. And in the braid, I may have skipped the 5.7 and went straight to a 5.5. And then at the crown of the head, I came in with the 5.5 and the 5.3, and I worked back over the hair. So the key with hair is to make sure that you put in your shadows where the strands overlap or are on top of each other and kind of twist. And by putting in that shadow or the cast shadow, you are creating dimension with the hair. A lot of people like to leave a lot of white for the reflection of the hair, which I typically do. But I didn't here because she is looking into a night sky, so I wanted the sky to be the prominent factor, but in a night sky, you're not going to have a lot of reflection onto the hair, especially if the hair is behind the light source, if that makes any sense. So that's why I didn't leave any white highlight, but I did leave enough in there to give you the depth and perception of different colored hair. And then I did some simple coloring with the flowers. I did a YG03 and a 13 for the leaves, and an R11 and R14 for the flowers. Because they were so tiny, it really didn't require much other than dotting on the color. Then I bring in the A7 book pop-up die, and I use the layer that would be appropriate for an A2 size card. And I die cut that with gold mirror cardstock, and that is going to be one of my decorative elements on my card. I am using a Cricut tool just to weed out the intricate pieces. You could use any type of pokey tool here. And then I realized I need to work on a sentiment, and I chose the Wishing You a Magical Day. And because I did not make an A7 card or a landscape card, I had to kind of get creative with my die cutting. So I first heat embossed this with gold onto black cardstock that I had treated with my anti-static powder tool. And in this case, the powder tool is very important because you don't want all the dust and stuff, because this is such a delicate font, okay? And then I heated that. And then you see that mess from the powder. Once my powder is cool, this is key. You've got to have cool powder or you're going to mess it up. I come in with a damp rag. You can do a dry rag. It's just mine happened to be damp. And I wipe that off. And then I die cut that with a sentiment banner from the Greetery. I think it's a crimped banner. So now we're going back to the fairy. I glued her down directly onto the background, leaving a small border because my plan is to glue down the gold frame on top of her, so it looks like she's kind of in between the pages of a book per se, if that makes any sense. So I love the way this looks. I love all the glimmer and shine. It's gorgeous. Now, because I used watercolor paper and a lot of water, I decided to use a fun foam sheet, and it's double-sided, and to mount my panel onto my card base, which is an A2 card base. I also put down the wet glue so that I would have a little bit of wiggle time. These adhesive fun foam sheets are super sticky. There's no reason to use glue other than you want the extra slip if you're like me and don't always glue things down straight. Now I'm coming in with that banner, and because it was so large, I cut it off right where the letters ended. And then I come in on the back side and I apply some glue, and I just make it so that the fishtails are right flush with the end of the sentiment. This is just a little bit of a trick. If you have a die that doesn't necessarily meet your needs, you can alter them, and then from there I popped that up on foam tape. That way everything is all one layer, but it has dimension, if that makes sense to you. And then I just glued that so that it would go across. Now, because this is hanging off of my A2 card, I would mail this in an A7 or 5x7 type envelope, or I would hand deliver it. I realize that not everybody will love this design, but I am in love with it. So if you've stuck with me this long, I would really appreciate it if you would like, comment, even consider subscribing or hitting that notification bell so that you know the next time that I post, and you can stay up to date with my antics. I really do appreciate all of my new subscribers, and I appreciate you sticking through the entire process. I had a blast with this card, and I hope that I have inspired you to get out your color burst or to make a galaxy background and to try your transparent objects. So tag me if you do. All of my socials will be listed down below. So I'm giving you some last shots of my card before I leave, and I think it turned out fantastic. I don't know how many times I have to say that, but I love it. So until next time, keep crafting and be blessed, my friends. Bye-bye.